Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are going to look at the next topic, that is the role of h-pawn in the Kingside attack. So today we are going to discuss a game based on castling on the same side and still how the h-pawn's advance can be used. So let's get started with the game. e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6. So another French classical game, and here white has main move e5 and there are some other important moves. Earlier we have looked at the move ed5 when we discussed the game about attack on the king and how to open the files in the center. So in this game white went with the move bishop g5. Here black usually goes be7. Other option is de4 and bb4. d4 will transpose to the Burn variation and bb4 makes it the McCutcheon variation. Black went for the be7, removing the pin and stopping the idea of e5. Stopping in the sense he saved the knight from getting pinned and attacked. So e5 is one main move here. After nd7, I have discussed about this. Here the move h4 is played. It's a very typical h-pawn advance, but today's topic is not based on that. This we are going to also discuss in future. In this game, white went bishop into f6, bishop f6 and e5. So this forces the bishop to go back to e7. This is one way of getting into the position, but if we play e5 instantly, then be7, then c5 is more easy for black to understand. So white used the move order nf3 in the game, and if black castles as he did in the game, then only he went with the move e5. Here c5 is a little risky because we are opening the center a bit early. So after ed cd bb5 check, white can go for the move short castle or queen e2 check. Hence white uses this move order. So once the center is closed, it's easy for black to get the move c5. Black castled here. As of now, there is nothing wrong with the move castle. e5, bishop e7, bd3. By now, many must have identified that this position is very similar to our games where we discussed about the Greek gift sacrifice. When bishop into h7 sacrifices takes place, and after king h7 knight goes to g5 and the queen comes to h5 and white gets a strong attack. But here the main difference is the c1 bishop is missing and it's not possible to get adequate support to the g5 square. That is one of the problems. Here black should have gone for the move c5, immediately putting pressure on the d4 pawn. Black played the first really bad move of the game, that is the move bd7. Actually this move contributes to nothing. It is not attacking the white center and giving white free hand to do whatever he wants. Very true, as I told him, there is no knight g5 yet. Knight g5, bg5, queen h5, looks like we attack g5 and h7. But g5 is already guarded and he can use the move bh6 to guard both otherwise also. So h7 and g5 both would be supported even if queen was not supporting the g5 bishop. White now has to make a plan. There is no outright tactic available. So the first plan usually that comes to mind is going qd2, then going long castle, and then perhaps using the g pawn or the h pawn to improve the position. But if we play qd2 right now, then the queen will never be able to reach the h5 square. The move short castle will allow black to play f6 and c5, get both the breaks at adequate moment. Short castle, maybe first he will go c5, force us to defend d4, and the trouble is also black can play c4 in some cases. So white here uses the right moment to play the move h4. So this is a preparatory move, and this first game for us is also a preparatory game which will teach us how to use the h-pawn when trying to attack the h7 square and try to create a kingside attack. So what we can say, this game is complementary to the games related to the Greek gift sacrifice, where the c1 bishop is missing. So what is white's plan with the move h4? We'll come to know if black plays the move c5. So it is a move which prepares the attack based on bh7 by controlling the g5 square. In a Greek gift position, what happens? Bishop h7, kh7, knight g5 check, and then after bg5, the queen joins h5. Usually what happens with bishop on c1 and black bishop not being on e7, knight g5 can be played safely. Here white is not having the c1 bishop, but he is using the h1 rook to compensate for that. Afterwards he is going to use hg as a check. Now for instance, this is white to play and win. After the move bishop h7 check, king takes h7, knight g5 check, and the first problem is if king goes to g8, then we have got qh5 immediately threatening mate on h8. So if rook e8, then queen h7, king f8 and queen h8 mates. And after the move bishop g5, hg5, now there are two threats, queen h7 and h8, so the f1 has to move. So after f6 or f5, both there is just the move g6. And even if the rook moves to e8, then qh8 is checkmate. So this is white's threat. We should also note that after knight g5, if direct bg5, then hg check first. qh5 check would allow bishop h6. So hg check first, and now after the move king g6, white has a very simple idea. He can go queen h5, king f5, and here there are several ways to win. We can consider the move g4, king f4, queen h2 check, force him to take g5 and continue the attack. Or we can play a very strong move here, the move rook h3. Waiting move, we are using the opposition like situation. It's not opposition, but the queen is covering all the squares here. This e4 square is guarded by the knight, and this is actually called the rook lift. The rook is shifted from one file to other. Rook shift or the rook lift. And now the next move will be rook f3 checkmate, no matter what black plays. So even after qg5, rook f3 is checkmate. So this was white's threat with the move h4. At this point, it's absolutely necessary to play the move h6 and stop the advance of the knight to g5. Once the pawn is on h6, after knight g5, we can firstly do bg5, hg, queen g5, not letting the h file to be opened, because sometimes what happens after hg there is bishop h7 check, king h7 and hg5 check. So this idea can be somewhat annoying, and we see that after king g8 same situation, queen lands up on h5. So h6 is one of the ways to stop the move knight g5. And if white wants to do anything else, like say g4, then black is about to get the advance c5. So if we want to keep the bishop on d3 intact, then white has to play something like knight e2, c5, c3 and keep place for the bishop on c2. To c4, bishop will still remain intact on the b1 h7 diagonal. So maybe any two would have been necessary for white if black had played h6. This became a very instructive and a useful case because black played the move f6. So here now white to play and win. f6 looks like it is creating same idea, knight g5 is stopped. If we look at the line bh7, we'll come to know bh7, kh7, knight g5. Here black can either go kg6, after which h5 check, and he can play king to h6, and if queen d3, then he can just do the move f5. After queen d3, f5, g5 is hanging. There was threat on g6 and h7 both. kg5 is very risky. kg5, qg6 will lead to mate. But after f5, there is no direct way for white to win over here, since after qd2, bishop into g5, the knight is lost. So bh7 idea is not that great. White has to go other way around. White went with the move knight g5. Here many students have told me that black can play the move h6 and try to survive the game. Very true, h6 can be played, but after the move like mh7, white's position is becoming really superior. Rook f7 will allow bg6, rook would get trapped, and after move like rook e8, queen is coming to h5, bishop is going to g6, and this position is really getting very messy for black. Black king is lacking space. We are able to use some sacrifice in f6 or ef6 idea, or even qh5 and g4 g5. So this position is also very bad for black. Of course, after seeing the game, we will say that still h6 was perhaps the only way. Black went f into g5. He thought that white has miscalculated perhaps, because after now bh7, king h7, queen h5 check, kg8, h into g, we see that the f7 square and h8 square both cannot be controlled at once. So the rook can move to f5 and the king can hide from f7 square. So bh7 check is incorrect. See, bh7, kh7, queen h5 check, kg8, h into g5 and rook f5. We stop the move g6 and king is getting placed on the f7 square. So queen h7 allows king f7, and after rook f5 now qh7 check, king f7, and we see that g6 allows king e8, when after queen check bf8 or rook f8 both are possible, and there is no mate. After f into g5, bishop h7 check, king h7, white had some other idea in mind, hg5 check. Now it looks like kg8 qh5 transposes to the same position, right? And the move kg6 we discussed some time ago. Same thing, queen h5 check, king f5, and the very strong move rook h3. No defense to the mate, rook f3 now. So black played the move kg8, thinking that after queen h5, rook f5, black is winning the game. But white had seen this while playing ng5. Here comes rook h8 check. Now if king takes h8, then queen h5 check, kg8 and g6. So same position we reached with the gain of tempo. Rook is missing, but the pawn and queen are sufficient to deliver the checkmate. Now the rook has to move. After any rook move, queen h7 check, king f8 and qh8 waits. In spite of having so much material, black is unable to stop this checkmate because everything is stuck on the queen side. Black played king f7, queen h5 check, stopping king's entry to the e8 square. Only move g6, and now a meeting 2 follows. qh7 check, ke8 and qg6 check and mate. So this was our first example of the move h4 when we are dealing about castling on the same side. So in future we will be seeing more complex cases where h pawn can be used in the same manner. I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.